You know, if you're going to learn anything, you want to learn it from the best of the best. So I've spent the last couple of weeks looking up all the best Warren Buffett quotes around money and success and investing. And when you sit down and look at these 39 quotes, I think you'll agree with me that Mr. Buffett is not only the best of the best, he has a way of, I guess, teaching us things, showing us things, and sharing with us knowledge that allows us to start to think differently. So I'm going to start with number one because I think that this is where Warren Buffett his genius believes in this. He said, American magic has always prevailed and it will do so again. That was in 2020 because he always thinks that the ingenuity of entrepreneurs, and it's not just American magic, it's the entrepreneurial magic. We find a way. I live in Las Vegas and people have said, oh, Vegas is down for the count, and it keeps coming back bigger and better. And I love that Mr. Buffett believes in the ingenuity. I believes in that we will prevail again and again because of technology, because of ingenuity, because of our thinking. Number two, he says this: fear is the most contagious disease you can imagine. It makes the virus look like a piker. He said, by the way, his definition as a piker is someone who bets small amounts of money. So at a shareholder meeting in 2020, when he said that, fear was everywhere. When you operate off of a basis of fear, you lose immediately. If you're don't be that fear monger. Don't be the person that believes in the fear. Fear, in my book, stands for false expectations appearing real, and craziness of getting drawn into all of that. Point number three, you've got to understand accounting. You've got to. That's got to be like a language to you. When he was being interviewed by Yahoo's finance editor-in-chief, he talked about the fact that if you don't understand the numbers, you basically how are you going to be an investor if you don't understand the numbers? And the language of business is accounting. It is numbers. So learn it, study it, and understand it. Number four, this is a pretty long one. He said, our favorite holding period is forever. We are just the opposite of those who try to hurry to sell and book profits. When companies perform well, but who tenaciously hang on to businesses that disappoint. So here you're selling when they perform well, but if they disappoint, you're like, well, let's hold until they get better. Craziness in his mind. Peter Lynch aptly likens such behavior to cutting the flowers and watering the weeds. Think about that for a second. Mr. Buffett's a genius. That was in 88 in his letter to shareholders. And if you haven't read his letter to shareholders, every year he puts out another great one. I think they're perfect. But his favorite holding period is forever. It's almost like if you don't want to hold it forever, don't buy the thing. Next one. It is far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. You got to invest in companies you believe in. You got to go for the things that you think are great companies and pay a fair price for it because it's a great company. It'll always get better type thing. And again, that was 1989 he said that. I love the fact that his stuff stand the test of time. Number six, price is what you pay, value is what you get. Price and value aren't always the same. You can't pay too much. 2008 letter to shareholders. Thank you again, Mr. Buffett. Number seven, lose money for the firm and I will be understanding. Lose a shred of reputation for the firm and I will be ruthless. In his congressional testimony in 92 regarding Solomon Brothers, by the way, when you sit down and think about it, reputation is everything. If you lose some money, great. Don't lose your integrity. That's a big point about it. Number eight, a simple rule dictates my buying. Be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. Going back to that fear rule sort of thing. This one was in 2008. Why? Because the crash that happened and boom, he's sitting there going, be fearful when others are greedy. If everyone's greedy, you got to start worrying at that point in time. Be skeptical if something looks too good to be true, I guess is maybe a part of that. Number nine, the important thing is to know what you know and know what you don't know. Let me say that again. The important thing is to know what you know and know what you don't know. Don't invest in stuff you don't understand. Don't try and, if you're an expert in it, invest in it. If you're not, don't invest in it. Point number 10, you cannot make a good deal with a bad person. I don't think I need to say anything more about that. Do deals with people you trust and like. If you know, like, and trust them, probably a good chance you'll make a good deal. Number 11, just buy something for less than it's worth. He was doing a lecture to Notre Dame, and he's like, just buy something for less than it's worth. And in essence, what he's saying is don't buy something unless you can see that it's undervalued. They might not see the value in it that you could see, but that's an important part. Number 12, whether we're talking about socks or stocks, I like buying quality merchandise when it is marked down. You know, when the stock market crashes, it's like it has a 50% off sale type thing. The same with socks or stocks. Price dips are an opportunity to increase your position. No two ways about it. Number 13, uncertainty is the friend of the buyer of long-term values. Let me say that again. Uncertainty actually is the friend of the buyer of long-term values. The future's never clear, but that uncertainty allows you to make deals that others won't be willing to do. Number 14, this was a letter to shareholders in 2016. As in the case with marriage, business acquisitions often deliver surprises after the I do's. Now, what does that mean? You don't know everything until you look at it. It's usually the buyer who encounters the unpleasant surprises. So do your due diligence. Do the work before you buy the company. Number 15, in my view, for most people, the best thing to do is owning the S&P 500 index fund. There are huge amounts of money people pay for advice they really don't need. Let me think about that for a second. Most people pay for advice and get all this advice for people that don't beat the S&P 500. Let's be blunt about that. If you park your money in index funds rather than individual stocks, you'll generally make around the same sort of return. The S&P 500 was his advice. That was in 2020 at his shareholders meeting. He stated that. Number 16, every decade or so, dark clouds will fill the economic skies and they will briefly rain gold. Hang on a second. Every decade or so, this was in 2016, every decade or so, dark clouds will fill the economic skies and they will briefly rain gold. Use a bucket, not a spoon, when there's gold being raining out of there. When there's fear and there's crashes and there's all of that dark clouds, be ready. Number 17, seize an opportunity while you can is really the meaning of this one. In 2009 at Columbia University, he said, and I quote, "Don't pass up something that's attractive today because you think you will find something better tomorrow." Bird in the hand, two in the bush type thing. Don't pass up something that's attractive today because you think you'll find something better tomorrow. Number 18, the sillier the market's behavior, the greater the opportunity for the business-like investor. Now, that was in 2003. But it's like if the market's going crazy and you're logical and stay cool, you can do better type thing. Number 19, you only learn who has been swimming naked when the tide goes out. 2007, he said that, a year before the crash came along. You only learn who's been swimming naked. I like to put it the other way, that the rising tide floats all boats. You know, people who think they're great, when the market crashes, you find out what's going on. Number 20, the best way to think about investments is to be in a room with no one else and to just sit and to just think. If that doesn't work, nothing else is going to work. Think about that for a second. Now, that was in 1998, he said that. The best way to think about investments is to be in a room with no one else and to just think. If that doesn't work, nothing else is going to work. I mean, Mr. Buffett is a reader. You all know that about him. He is a massive reader, and I think that's important to be a part of it. Number 21, what we do is not beyond anyone else's competence. I feel the same way about managing that I do about investing. It's just not necessary to do extraordinary things to get extraordinary results. You know, if you just do the right work and do it consistently and persistently, you don't have to have a massive IQ to be successful in business. Knowledge is more valuable than a high IQ is probably the simplest way to put it. Probably his most famous quote, number 22. Rule number 1 is never lose money. Rule number 2 is never forget rule number 1. He said that in 1985, interestingly enough. He does admit, though, to making a few mistakes of following his own rule or not following his own rule over the years. Number 23, when seeking directors, CEOs, don't look for pit bulls. It's the Cocker Spaniel that gets taken home. Think about that for a second. He doesn't want the pit bulls out there running his companies. He wants the Cocker Spaniels running his companies. When you're looking for a board position, think about that. All this different aspect of what he's looking for. Very important words. Number 24, I have every possession I want. I have a lot of friends who have a lot more possessions, but in some cases I feel the possession possesses them rather than the other way around. Dang, 2012 on CBS News, he said that one. I have every possession I want. I have a lot of friends who have a lot more possessions, but in some cases I feel the possession possesses them rather than the other way around. Number 25, your best investment is yourself. There is nothing that compares to it. Think about that for a second. Your best investment is you. Nothing else can compare to investing in yourself. Your knowledge, keep reading, keep studying, keep learning, keep doing the courses. Keep coming back here. Subscribe on this YouTube. Ring the bell. Do the whole thing. Number 26, someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. Long-term thinking. Gotta love Mr. Buffett. If you aren't willing to own a stock for 10 years, don't even think about owning it for 10 minutes. That's number 27. If you're not willing to own it for 10 years, don't even think about owning it for 10 minutes. Yeah, I know a lot of people make money by trading in and out and that sort of stuff, but this is Mr. Buffett. This is the best of the best. Okay? When you go back to number 28, and just I want to reinforce one that he made in a longer quote, but he said it again and again. He said this one multiple times, in fact, over the years. Our favorite holding period is forever. Remind yourself of that one. How many times he said it? I should write that quote as like I should say it to you 4 or 5 times today. Number 29, the most important quality for an investor is temperament, not intellect. You know, fear, panic, worry, excitement, all of those things will kill an investor. Temperament is far more important than intellect, Mr. Buffett says to us. Number 30, oh, I love this one. Risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. Risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. Study, learn. You know, someone said to me recently, you know, sales is really hard. Yeah, if you've never studied sales, sales is really hard. If you've never studied anything, it's really hard. If you've never practiced, it's really hard. Running a marathon is really hard for someone that's never trained. You know, time and time again, we have to remind ourselves of things. Number 31, and this one is one of my absolute favorites. Never invest in a business you cannot understand. If you can't understand it, don't invest in it. If you don't get it, if you don't clearly understand it, it's like people come to me all the time with technology businesses, and I sit and I look at it and I go, you know what? It's not my ball game. It's just not my thing. I don't, and I could study it and I could learn it and I could really understand it, but that's not my thing. Never invest in a business you cannot understand, Mr. Warren Buffett. Number 32, never depend on a single income. Make an investment to create a second source. So often, and in my 30x wealth course, I teach people all about this, but you've got to take the money you make and you've got to invest a percentage of it and build that investment income so you have at least a second source. You know, and people say you need 7 sources of income. I'll dispel that truth, that myth on my 30x wealth. If you haven't studied it, go and study that one now. Number 33, no matter how great the talent or efforts, some things just take time. You can't produce a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. Now, obviously, Mr. Buffett has a way with words and a way with thinking, but, you know, great work takes time. Great results take time. You can't just expect things in a business or an investment to turn around in a day. You've got to take the time and energy to have things grow. You've got to invest the time and energy to build a business. You've got to invest the time and energy to build your wealth. You've got to learn the principles of success. If you haven't studied my 30X life, study the success principles in that. Click it, go to it, learn it. Oh, what are we up to? Number 34. Today, people who hold cash equivalents feel comfortable. They shouldn't. They have opted for a terrible long-term asset, one that pays virtually nothing and is certain to depreciate in value. Cash and cashables, okay? My definition of an investment is it has two things, capital growth and cash flow. If it doesn't have capital growth and cash flow, I don't see it as an investment. What Mr. Buffett is saying quite clearly in this quote, if you hold cash equivalents, you feel comfortable, but you shouldn't. Because with inflation, with all of these things, it's not going to be where you want it to be. Number 35. We never want to count on the kindness of strangers in order to meet tomorrow's obligations. When forced to choose, I will not trade even a night's sleep for the chance of extra profits. You see, Mr. Buffett is not about, well, my reading of this quote. Let me say this is my reading of this quote, what I understand of it. Is don't put yourself in a position where you can't sleep at night. Don't overextend yourself. Don't put yourself into a position where you can't sleep because you're worried about the fact that, oh, I've overextended myself. I've done too much. I've put myself in a position. I've overinvested. Well, maybe I'll make that little bit extra, just enough, and boom, if I get that last deal, I'll cover it. No. Keep yourself in a position where you can sleep at night. Be comfortable with what's going on out there in your investing and in your business. Number 36, we're almost to number 39. Number 36, Warren Buffett quote, forecasts may tell you a great deal about the forecaster. They tell you nothing about the future. Yes. You watch these TV shows where they're forecasting what's going to happen, and it tells you the way they think. That doesn't mean it's real. An opinion is not fact. Facts are historical evidence, okay? There's historical evidence that is a fact. It was at this number on this day. Future is all about opinions, and when you get all of these people that are forecasting what's going to happen, that doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. You need to work on your own opinions. You need to value it, become an expert in the area yourself, and make wise decisions on your own. Number 37. This is important. When trillions of dollars are managed by Wall Streeters charging high fees, it will usually be the managers who reap the outsized profits, not the clients. If there is people managing trillions of dollars and charging high fees, they will make more profits than the clients. I can't argue with him. I really can't. You know, literally, Wall Street is the only place where people who have a lot of money go and ask advice from people who ride the subway to work. It's just one of those things. Now, there's a lot of great investment advisors out there, but that doesn't make it the system is a system of fees, the system of trading, because every trade leads to more fees and so on. Number 38, love this one as well. The best chance to deploy capital is when things are going down. When things are on the way down is the best time for you to make an investment. When things are on the way down is the best time for you to put money in, for you to actually do the things you need to do and deploy capital. Which means you need to have capital in the uptime so that when there is a downtime, you've got cash ready. It's kind of like the winter, spring, summer whole thing. You know, make hay when the sun shines. Get the hay, put it in the shed so that when it falls, you're ready to buy. Number 39. This is Mr. Buffett's version of what I said earlier. Wall Street is the only place where people ride into a Rolls Royce to get advice from those who take the subway. You know, Warren Buffett's advice to all of us is pretty dang clear. Investing is a thing about buying at the right time, about holding for a long time, and about doing things the right way. These are his top 39 quotes, in my opinion. You might have another one to add. If you do have another great Warren Buffett quote, add it here. Type it with me. Give me the next Warren Buffett quote. Subscribe, follow, make sure you are getting this, because every week we come up with more information to help you become richer, become better at business, and become better at life. I'm Brad Sugars. It's your turn to make sure that you keep learning and keep growing and keep taking action.